Hey, welcome to the Continuing Winemaker series here at the Wine Month Club. It's not really winemakers right now. We're just having a ton of fun at the Gambaro Rosso show here in downtown Los Angeles with the Kalemkiarian wines, which I want to talk about that too. But we're here with Mark Newman, one of the greats of this business, been around a long time. We're going to talk about the history of LA wine stores and the LA wine scene. We're going to talk about his experience here with Gambaro Rosso and a huge honor that he's been bestowed on for next year. And we're just going to catch up too. We've been knowing each other for probably 20 years.
At least.
Yeah?
Yeah, at least 20 years. Yeah.
And now I'm finding out that he worked at a liquor store, and I worked at a liquor store. So it's amazing. So
we both had family business.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know, man. It's getting too complicated for me, frankly. But you were coming to the Wine Month Club. Maybe even you sold wine to my dad at the store.
Yep, I sold wine to your dad at the store and PV, and then later on when I was at Young's Market Company, I ran the fine wine division for Young's Market Company, doing about $150 million a year in my division.
Wow. That's
so
amazing.
you're one of our good customers.
And that was like the beginning of really the wine distribution in LA, because the Wine Warehouse started in 75 or 76, and so the wine market in LA was sort of in its infancy. So when your dad had the store, which was what's it called?
It was called Financial Center Liquors, but the distributors were all different. I mean, Wine Warehouse got started in the 70s.
Yeah, 76.
And we were one of their first customers because it was close to our store. There was a company called Paramount. There was a number of companies that don't exist anymore. Shallert. And later on I ran Shallert.
Really?
And later on I ran Young's.
Wow.
So the people that taught me all this stuff when I was really a kid, because I started at 13, and at 16, I was written up in Los Angeles Magazine as one of the top 10 wine merchants.
That's absolutely fascinating, because so I don't know. I'm not going to try and put you in order as to how old you are, but when California wine hit the scene with Jim Barrett, and he was coming to my dad's store all the time. He was a neighbor of ours in 1975 or 76. California still wine. The Los Angeles wine market wasn't very sophisticated.
No, not at all.
Big, right?
It was mostly French, little German, and emerging California, because back then there were very few new wineries. We were one of the first stores to carry Mayacamas.
Oh, wow.
And it didn't exist, but the brother-in-law of the owner was a stockbroker next to our store. So we were the first one to carry his stuff. But I couldn't ever get the Davies family to sell me Schramsberg.
Oh, no, yeah, well, we had Schramsberg. PV Liquor had Schramsberg.
Yeah, that's right.
So you have to get this book in the middle of called Tangled Vines. Have you read this thing?
I haven't read it yet.
You have to read it.
Okay.
Because you will know all the players. I know all the players. You'll know them better. And it's a fascinating history. And it goes back to Rancho Cucamonga with the birth of California wine. But so fascinating, because every time you walk into my office still, I'll say, hey, it's the $1 Million Palate, because at Young's on your card, it said the $1 Million Palate.
Right.
Now,
It did.
They insured your palate.
They insured my palate, and the company before that, Shallert Wine Company and Bohemian Distributing, did that back in the 80s for me. So what happened was, at a staff meeting one day, it was brought up, and somebody said, what happened if Newman's palate goes to hell? And the CFO said, let's insure it. So that's how that got started. It was way before thinking of J-Lo's buns getting insured. But in the old days, there were people like Marlene Dietrich had her legs insured for $1 million. And so that's where the idea really came from. But I was doing so many direct imports and fun wines that the company was making great money on, and they were worried about the risk.
Yes.
So that's how the $1 Million Palate insurance policy.
On your card.
Yeah, and I have fun with it. It's,
sure,
I mean, you too can pay the premium.
Yes, right. But, I'm sure these days Lloyd's of London isn't going to be cheap to do that, right?
Yeah, it's not so bad. It's a really big liability, like a personal injury policy.
Right, sure.
So it's not so bad.
So you're talking about Shallert and Bohemian, and when Bohemian closed finally, which was, maybe you know the story better than I do, but it was just like, we decided we're not going to do this anymore. But there was that building, I think it's in North Hollywood, which was 4 quadrants.
Right.
And it was Bohemian, Shallert,
Western,
and I can't remember.
And you had a Don Snyder company.
Oh yeah, Don Snyder, right. So those are the days where price fixing, Patterson's controlled the market, everything was the same. Now it's totally different.
Right.
And it's chaotic out there. And one of the pieces of conversation I've had with not only the winemakers here, but other people, is that my business, the DTC side, has gotten so congested and crazy. And it's because there's this evolving consumer actually is now starting to settle down. And that is these people that were thinking they're going to get good wines for Groupon, for $5 a bottle, and they're going to get good wines from these clubs because they bring them from Europe, and it turns out they're buying €1 wines and it's all crap.
It's really about the person selecting the wine. So if you might have some financial people from Wall Street say, hey, I know a guy knows something about wine, maybe worked in a restaurant. You've been at this since you were a kid. You innately know. You taste every day, every week. And that's a real palate. New people coming in, they don't have a frame of reference. And I see this with a lot of the young sommeliers. You've traveled in Europe. You know what the deal is. What is a real wine? And that's the credibility that many new companies do not have. And you have that. And I think you need to keep telling your customers, you know, I know this, I'm the real deal.
We get it. Well, here's the story. And now Steve's heard it 7 times today, but I had a freelance writer in my office last week. She had flown from New York to do something in LA, and she wanted to sit with me during a Tuesday tasting session and to see that we do cull through all this stuff that you see on the show. And while she was sitting there, there was a case of samples from one of my competitors, big competitor I eventually capitalized in New Jersey. I pulled it out. It was a Beaujolais 16. I love Beaujolais. Good Beaujolais is great, right? Undrinkable. And she's like, this is terrible. I said, yeah, it's terrible. And they're selling it for $18.
Yeah.
So I roll it over, Saturday Night Live Beaujolais. I mean, come on, seriously?
Somebody's just looking at marketing.
Can't you do any better than that? Saturday Night Live. So now you told me you've been with this.
Gambero Rosso is
9 years now?
9 years of doing this, and Gambero Rosso is a very interesting entity. So what happens is there's 70 tasters around the country, canvassing every one of the 20-plus regions of Italy.
Wow.
70 tasters. There's 3 main tasters in the office in Rome. So they cull down to the 22,000, and some years it could be 25, could be 21,000.
Yeah, sometimes.
Then they get down to the final event. And the big award, they don't give scores, 95 points, 100 points. What they do is they have a 1 glass, a 2 glass, or a 3 glass. The top award is the 3 glass award. Yeah. So they're different. They're not about scoring. And what they find, and philosophically, is that wines are of value, and it's of each region, what's indigenous. It's not that a Tre Bicchieri that came from a little winery in Emilia-Romagna and sells for $15, you can't compare it to Sassicaia getting a Tre Bicchieri, which is a fabulous wine. But I love it that they find wines that are 15 and 20 and $25 that are absolutely killer wines. But the origin of Gambero Rosso is the red shrimp. Okay, most people don't realize that.
The shrimp on the side.
There's a little shrimp in the logo. And it got started because Gambero Rosso, 31 years ago, started as the food and wine, or the wine and food supplement to the Communist Party newspaper in Rome.
Wow.
And
I did not know that.
as part of the story goes, they started developing the story, and the subscriptions to like the Sunday paper started going skyrocketing because of this wine and food supplement. Well, these guys quickly decided they're capitalists and not communists. They saw a business. And they started tasting and rating wines, and that's how it got started. But that's where the red shrimp more or less comes from.
So
it's kind of a fun deal. And so part of their philosophy of the company, it's not elitist, it's not what's the most expensive wine, it's about good wine. And what's good from an area. So they're very committed to finding and tasting great wines that are sometimes very unknown and discovering these wines.
That's what the conversation I had with the gentleman was, I asked the question, I said, you're looking for terroir, you're looking for the source of the grape, you're looking for the understanding of the region through the wine, and are you, he goes, well, you don't know what the brand is.
No, it's totally blind. You only know your region.
You know, blind to the fact that you only know the region.
Yep, that's it, because you shouldn't be comparing, does a wine, because we just did a seminar upstairs with Emilia-Romagna where they grow Sangiovese.
Right.
And a Sangiovese from there does not taste like Sangiovese from Tuscany.
No.
But is it a great wine? We had a couple, my favorite wine term is yummy. I've gotten...
Well, the $1 million palate comes up with yummy, that's great.
It's because as I've gotten older, I'm more simple about it. I want a tasty wine for dinner.
Right.
Or whatever I'm doing, I want it to be just yummy, and I want to enjoy it. And it doesn't have to be crazy priced wines. And quite frankly, I think the prices that are happening in Napa Valley or in Bordeaux, they've gotten absurd. It's about ego. It's not about the quality of the wine. So I always like to find great bang for the buck wines. And you find this in this list of wines, like the 2 Bicchieri, the 2 Glass Awards.
Yes.
It's just littered with values.
Great wines. Yeah.
Just great
Good
wines.
Just good price.
And you're not worrying, is it 85 points, 89 points, 91 points? That's not the issue. So the range that they find in this 1, 2, and 3 glass, imagine they tossed out 23,000 wines, or 22,000 wines that didn't make the cut to even get considered.
Phenomenal. That's phenomenal.
50% out the door because some winemaker wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
But then as they drill down with these 70 tasters, and the 70 tasters starts funneling the wines to the office in Rome, then they cull it down. And just on Monday night, which I told you a little bit earlier, as Gambero Rosso has asked me to come to sit in with the final tasting, to come down to the 4. They don't know exact whatever the number is going to be. It's not a finite number.
Around 10%.
But it's 1%.
Maybe 1%, yeah.
It's 1% of the wines that will get awarded this award out
This
of.
is a 5-panel. This is 5
So
people.
yeah, you got 3 people in Rome, and I'll be the 4th legs
That's
to sit.
What an honor.
It's a great honor, and I think this will be my rookie year. So I don't know how they'll take my opinion, but I'm a serious taster, and I taste a minimum of 3,000 wines a year, maybe 4,000, and usually blind.
Yep.
And so as a result of that, I'm going to get the experience in the rookie year, and maybe I'll get to vote.
You get the taste of some of the greats.
But these
that's
people.
A lot of pressure too, right? I don't know if you're-
It's serious
all of a
business.
sudden you're like, wait a minute, I got my palate's got to be really functioning because it does change.
Oh, it changes, and it changes after when you're traveling.
Yeah.
It's different, but the senior editor Marco Sabellico, who unfortunately is not here today, was with us for the tour earlier. He's really kind of the #1 palate in Italy.
Really.
And it's so much fun to go tasting with him. We'll go through Umbria, through Tuscany, or wherever we're going. We're in San Gimignano tasting just light, beautiful whites in San Gimignano.
Wow.
And when this guy arrives, and you've traveled to hundreds of wineries in your time, you're in the trade, you're treated well. When this guy arrives, it's like the Pope has arrived.
Yeah, it's a whole different level of.
It just takes it, it's on steroids to know how you do it. But he's so humble, and he's a good taster, and he's instructive. Sometimes a winery owner will say, what do I do? How do I get it better? And he'll recommend a few different winemakers to figure out what kind of style. So he's very giving with his knowledge.
Well,
and
you should do with it, right?
It's a blast to go tasting with him.
I bet. Well, that's an honor for you. Congratulations. I think it's great.
Thank you. And I love these people. They're great. They're so much fun to work with.
€1 million palate now.
Could be. We just, amp me up by 15%.
That's right. You said one thing. You said, I want yummy wines. It's funny because when it's all said and done, and when I taste all these wines at the end of the day, sometimes it comes down to, would I take this home and serve it to my friends because it's just good? Despite its citrus, and one of the really important feasts is, Ed Maciano well,
Sure.
right? So Ed will come in and he'll dissect the wine, and we have a great time together tasting wines, but he'll love something, and I would say, yeah, it's interesting, it's complex, it's got all the components, but I don't think people would enjoy it.
Well, that's the point, and I think beware of the person saying, "Oh, that's interesting."
Yeah,
because it's you take a look at the esoteric part of wines and the little things that 99% of the consuming public wouldn't necessarily like, but for the geeks, they might like it. It's often like the discussion of natural wine and orange wine, and this is a discussion I like to have because those wines are oxidized, and they're on the fast track going downhill, and yet people find it a fashion. For me, and wine is all personal. It's all about what you like. People ask me all the time, Mark, do you have a favorite wine?
Yeah.
And my answer, what are you drinking tonight?
Yeah.
That's my favorite wine because you're buying it, you're loving it.
My answer is gin.
Mine too. We start with a martini at home. It's
Actually, it's funny you said the natural thing. My daughter is a baking chef in New York. She's a high-level chef, and she goes, when you come down, we're going to go to Brooklyn. There's this really cute wine shop. I'm like, all right, whatever. So we go, and it's all natural, right? And small shelf. It looks like they use Costco shelving racks or from Staples or something. And on the bottom shelf was some Sicilian wines, and they're all natural. And I didn't even look at the price. But Dad, she goes, "This is all natural. Let's taste it." So I grabbed the bottle, I put it up on the counter. First of all, it rings up at $75.
Oh, jeez.
I'm like, I don't pay $75 for wine,
Right.
but okay, I'm with you in New York. Take it home. Couldn't drink it. Could not drink it. But she says, "Dad, it's natural." I go, "I don't care."
Right.
It doesn't.
The little bit of sulfites that are used in wine
Yeah.
is so infinitesimal. And I know, like your experience there, my wife and I were in Vienna this past summer, a restaurant. They only have natural wine and orange wine on the list.
Really?
I could not find a single wine that complemented the food. And just like your daughter said, but it's natural.
Yeah.
I don't care. I want a yummy wine.
Yeah.
And I don't find most, not all, but most of the, quote, natural wine to be flavorful.
They're not, and because if they're gonna, it's new to the industry. Let's say it's 5 or 7 years old. It takes almost that long to figure it out. You're gonna change vinification techniques in farming. All of a sudden, you don't start making better wine. It takes, you got to learn how to trellis that natural wine. You got to learn how to feed the soil.
Well, it all starts in the vineyard, of course. But once it gets to the making of the wine and then bottling it, wine is a fragile product.
Very fragile.
And if you're treating the soil right, and if you're organic, which I think I see a lot of vineyards, and I was in France last year in Puy-Fouissé.
Mm-hmm.
There's a wonderful chateau, Chateau de Beauregard, which had been around the market. Wonderful place. And their vineyard is all organic, but the immediate row, there's no wall between the next vineyard owner. And you could see the row of Beauregard where it borders his neighbor, where they do spray chemicals.
Really?
You could see the guy's vineyard wasn't as verdant and healthy looking. Then you saw this one row that's just kind of on the border. It looked slightly better. But 2 or 3 rows in, you saw a clear-cut difference.
Wow, that's so interesting.
And I find that's the difference, because in the old days, they didn't have chemicals.
Right.
And so I'm a believer in organic farming, but at the same time, some areas of the world, Bordeaux is a place where you get powdery mildew, and you have to do something to knock it down, or it's going to destroy your whole vintage. So to be a minimalist on things is, I think, the way things to go, and I think then you can produce a great wine, and that you don't have to be using chemicals or no herbicides in the vineyard. I think that very much has its proper place.
Just for the sheer nature of being organic or being natural is not necessarily a great objective, as long as you're not sacrificing the wine, because it's about the experience. Hey, Mark, it's been a great pleasure seeing you.
Yeah, it's great to see you.
And hearing about your congratulations on your accolade here for being part of this very, very exclusive team of wine tasters. So,
well, and thank you for coming down and meeting everybody.
and you'll see this on YouTube and live podcasts, and
Wonderful.
you get your royalty check.
Well, happy to be here.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.